Hi, this is Father Eric, and I am doing a YouTube version of a forum that I gave on Sunday, June 11th, 2023, a forum to talk about the plans for my upcoming sabbatical this fall. I wanted to have a chance to answer questions and to kind of go over what my plans are and what the plans are for the church. And so feel free, if you're watching this on YouTube, to reach out to me directly with thoughts or questions. You can contact me at the church, 248-651-6188, or my email is ericw, at stpfeeds.org, and I'd be happy to chat with you about any questions that come up. So what is a sabbatical? Sabbatical is a word that comes from the Greek word for Sabbath, and it's a biblical idea, which we'll talk about in a second. But we have to say that most people don't have sabbaticals in their work life. Most professions and jobs don't allow for intentional sabbaticals. Sometimes people have an unintentional sabbatical when they're laid off or something like that. But a paid sabbatical that's part of the profession is quite rare. It's most common in the academic world. Academics often take sabbaticals from teaching, but usually their sabbatical is for the purpose of researching and writing articles or perhaps a book. And so that time out of the classroom is really time that can be dedicated to the pursuit of more academic research and writing. Clergy sabbaticals sometimes look like that, but in general, they're different. They have a different purpose. It's not about publish or perish. It's really about renewal and preventing burnout. The Episcopal Church and other churches have been concerned about rising rates of burnout among clergy, and it can lead to unfortunate consequences too. Clergy sometimes will act out, abusing alcohol or drugs, or as of course we've all heard about sexual misconduct cases. And while some of those are deeply rooted in mental health problems, they can sometimes be related to burnout. And so some churches have put some energy into developing programs to help clergy to stay healthy emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And sabbaticals are a part of that. So I liked this comments from a book called Sabbatical Guide for Pastors from a group called Soul Shepherding. Not an Episcopal group, but I like what they had to say. And they grounded some of this in the 23rd Psalm, the most beloved of all the Psalms. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. And so I think at the heart of the idea of a sabbatical is soul restoration. And how does that happen? Through a kind of Sabbath rest. So we know from the book of Genesis that when God created the world in 6 days, he rested on the seventh and set that as a pattern for God's people, that they should always keep the Sabbath holy and do no work. And so this kind of interesting, in a workaholic culture, the sacredness of rest is really important in a weekly kind of pattern. There's also vacation time, and there's also this idea of sabbatical. In the Bible, actually in the book of, I think it's Deuteronomy, there is also an extension of this. The seventh year was kind of a Sabbath year to let fields restore themselves. Don't plant them for a season, crop rotation idea too, to let them lie fallow so that they could restore the nutrients. And then there's a wonderful idea. Scholars debate if it ever actually happened, but the idea of a Jubilee year, the 50th year, would be a Jubilee year, and 7 sevens, right? You get to 7 cycles of 7 years, and then on the 50th year, a big reset button. And in the Jubilee year, according to the Bible, all debts would be forgiven, all slaves would be set free, and everything would kind of be reset, a new beginning, a new creation kind of idea. So honestly, I didn't want to wait 50 years for a sabbatical, so I'm going with the 7-year cycle as a better time frame. Typical clergy sabbaticals are from 1 to 6 months, with 3 being kind of the standard, and they typically happen around every 7 years. So I will have been at St. Philip's 7 years this coming January. So at about 6 3/4 years, I'm taking a 3-month sabbatical. And what is the purpose? What is the idea of it? It's really about rest. It's about stringing together this idea of Sabbath and putting it in a longer time frame. I find on vacation, it takes me several days to kind of unwind and let my mind slow down. And then if it's a week-long vacation, I'm gearing up again for work. And so you don't get that sort of prolonged sense of disengagement from the worries and busyness of work life. And so sabbatical is a time to do no work. It's not like you're not doing anything, but you're not pastoring, you're not leading, you're not worried about, the details of what happened on Sunday or what meeting's coming up or who needs to be visited, that kind of thing. It's about disengagement to recharge. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Why sabbaticals are good for clergy? Because that process of disengagement is a really important part of renewing heart, body, mind, and soul. And by stepping away from the busyness of life, you then can recover a sense of who you are. At least that's the goal, to be more deeply grounded in God, to remember, I often think in my office, I have hanging up my baptismal certificate and my confirmation certificate, because I want to always remember that it's important to be a pastor, but what's really important is being a Christian. And so to me, sabbatical time is like recovering that. Like, instead of Sunday being a time just to produce a sermon or lead worship, it's a time to kind of experience that in a different way. To let God speak more clearly in our lives and vocations. And hopefully the fuel to power several more years of active ministry here at St. Philip's. I was telling people at the forum about a year ago, I was at a pretty low point emotionally. Not terrible, but I was just feeling like blah, how that sometimes happens in life. And, it's been a very, very busy 6 years at St. Philip's. When I came as priest in charge, there was a lot of turmoil, and a lot of my job was just building relationships. I made 100 visits to parishioners in my first year. My dad died that year, and my daughter graduated from high school, and it was just frantic. And then the next couple of years were really years of rebuilding and growth here. And by 2019, the end of 2019, we had a pretty vibrant Sunday school and youth group, and a lot of our ministries were coming back online, and we were digging our way out of our financial issues, and things were really clicking. And then, of course, the pandemic hit in 2020, and we had to redo everything, redo worship, redo ministry, redo pastoral care, rethink everything, reinvent everything. And so, about a year ago, I was pretty spent. I was thinking maybe, you heard about the Great Resignation. Maybe I should just throw in the towel. Maybe this is it. Do something else. I've been a priest long enough now at 30 years to qualify for a pension. Maybe I should just, ease on out. But then I took some real time of prayer and discernment and took a vacation and realized that I am not done. If you'll have me, I want to stay at St. Philip's for at least a few more years, because I think we're really on a good path and things are clicking and going well again. And we're seeing new members and new energy and new ministry. And I would hate to get in the way of that. And so I really feel a call to be here. And so as I thought about that over the past year, I thought, so how do I do that with a sense of intention and integrity and energy? And that's when I realized that I'm eligible now at this 7-year mark for a sabbatical. And it seemed to me, and I talked it over with the vestry, a good plan to hopefully, again, be the battery to fuel really good, positive years at St. Philip's after the sabbatical. So that's why the timing and what my thinking is, a way to keep me engaged and fruitful in ministry here for a good long while. So why sabbaticals are good for congregations, according to lots of studies by these different groups, what often happens as a pastor stays for a while is you kind of get into a rut, right? It's easier sometimes for the pastor just to do some stuff rather than encouraging others to do it or get involved. And so this classic pattern of kind of overfunctioning and underfunctioning starts to take place. It's been mitigated here because St. Philip's, one of our core strengths, is a history of strong lay leadership. And so we have continued to have very, very able and strong leadership. Even during tough times, we've had a core of people that were really effective in leading ministries here. And so the sabbatical time is really a time for that to grow, for maybe new members to step up and try out new ministries, to engage in things that maybe thought, well, the priest has that covered. I don't have to worry about it. There's already some new ministry. A new pastoral care committee is being created and is working on training so that they can continue to bring communion to homebound parishioners and cover pastoral care in my absence. And I believe that committee will be effective even after I get back in increasing and enhancing the pastoral care that we're able to offer as a congregation. We have a new men's ministry. We have, new officers coming into the ECW and hospitality and greet, you name it. There's some wonderful stuff happening. And a sabbatical is a time to foster and cultivate even more lay leadership and ministry. So it can be a really fruitful time for a church. Like an interim can be, not always, but in an ideal setting, that's what an interim time is too. And this is a way of almost having a mini interim while you keep your same pastor. And then the hope is at the end of the sabbatical, we come together in a joyous reunion, and we are both stronger church, stronger priest, doing even stronger ministry for the glory of God. And that can be really, really exciting. And that has been the case in several congregations. So what are my plans? Well, I considered all kinds of stuff. I was thinking about an academic focus sabbatical, doing some writing, some research, some Bible study. I was flirting with the idea of starting a podcast. Every middle-aged white guy's got to have a podcast. I feel like I'm behind the curve. But none of that spoke to my heart. It all sounded good intellectually, but when I kind of investigated the yearning of my heart, the theme that emerged was much deeper, and that was a yearning for friendship. I was shocked to know, I've always struggled as a priest to cultivate and keep friends. I love you all as parishioners. I've always loved the parishioners I have and feel very close and have very many close relationships within congregations. But friendship is a slightly different thing. You need me to be your priest more than you need me to be your buddy. It's not always mutually exclusive, but you need to know that I'll be professional and be there and do my job. And you don't always need to hear about all the messier stuff in my life. And so it's important for people to have close friends that they can really confide in and kind of let down their hair. I don't have that much hair left, but it's important to have that in your life. And I was shocked. I knew this was an issue for me, but I was shocked to find out that in a study, 70% of pastors reported having no close friends. That's a big number. And it speaks to, I think, the kind of lifestyle of clergy where we're so involved in our parishes that it's easy to kind of lose sight of other activities. And so anyway, when I thought about my friends, I thought I do have very close friends. They're just not geographically close. They're scattered all over creation. The West Coast, the East Coast, England, Germany, just all over. And so I thought, wouldn't it be fun to reconnect with friends? Wouldn't it be fun to see if there's still a friendship there, to track these people down, kind of stalk them and find them and go connect and see what happens. And so I began to do some thinking and praying and working on that. And that's the focus of the sabbatical, a quest to find and reconnect with these dear people in my life, many of whom I have lost touch with over the years. So I started this on our recent trip to LA for Emily's graduation. I grew up in LA, still have friends there, and I thought, wow, we'll start that week. So early in the week before all the relatives came in for the graduation, we got together with some of my oldest friends in the world. So on that upper picture, that is my friend Susana Bautista, who is an art curator in Los Angeles. And we grew up together in that kind of extended friend slash family group. Our families would be together for Thanksgiving and Christmas sometimes, and hadn't really seen her for decades. And so it was really wonderful to have dinner with her. And then on the lower left, an even older, similar time frame, this was my very best friend from 4th through 6th grade, Derek Cotton. He's in the middle there with his son. And he was able to stop by, and we spent a couple hours together reconnecting. Hadn't seen him probably since we were in junior high school. And then on the lower right, sort of my second family growing up. These were neighbors, dear friends. The son was my very best friend from like 1st grade through 6th grade, or went to high school together too. His sister, who's on the far left in that picture, was a year older, and I went to the same college she did in Massachusetts. She met her husband, who's on the far right there at that college, who was my classmate. Just dear friends. And so this was a test, like, okay, what is it? Does this speak to my soul to see these friends? And it was incredibly joyful to have that time with these old friends that were geographically separated, maybe Christmas cards or not much, Facebook, but to be in person, to see them was very renewing. And so I thought, okay, I'm on the right track. There'll be some travel as part of the sabbatical. I will be back in LA for my older daughter's white coat ceremony as she begins medical school the first week of September. And we're going to spend a few days, Susan and I, with my godsons who live in Santa Barbara. So we'll spend a few days up there with them and then go down to LA for the ceremony and have a good time there with both our daughters who will be out there. So that'll be great. And then the big trip is Europe in October. Susan and I are going to go to Germany to visit our former exchange student, Paula, and her family, spend some time with them in southern Germany. And then Susan will come home. She has to work. Somebody has to work and take care of the dog. And I'm going with our best friend from seminary, has just retired. And one of his dreams was to live in Spain. And so he's been taking Spanish classes and doing Duolingo. And I said, well, I took high school Spanish, so I've been doing Duolingo too for the last couple of years. And he and I are going to do a 2-week Spanish intensive class in southern Spain. That's the big part of the sabbatical trip. So that's going to be fun and challenging, and hopefully keep the brain working. And then I'll go on for one more hop to England to catch up with the best man at our wedding and a college friend from my time in Wales, and see them. And then back home, and then one last trip. Susan and I are going to Florida in the middle of November to visit friends down there. My oldest friend from childhood, the one whose family was in that other picture, and a couple other friends, my former bishop and a deacon friend who now live in Florida. So those are the trips, and that's kind of the scope of it. And then there may be time for a day trip or overnight trip to see friends in driving range, maybe out to the Buffalo area or to Wisconsin, testing out the limits of my electric car. So that might be an adventure as well. So if I don't come back at the end of November, I may be stranded in my car needing a charge. So what about St. Philip's? During this time, what plans has St. Philip's been making? One is that this has been in the plans from the beginning. In my letter of agreement when I first came to St. Philip's, there is a provision for sabbaticals that leave accrues at the rate of 2 weeks per year of service. And so by the end of 6 years, you have about 3 months of sabbatical leave accrued. Sabbatical arrangements need to be approved by the vestry with timelines and activities. And so that is what we're in the process of doing. One thing I would note for the future, churches that have done this successfully have also made financial provisions. We have not been able to because of the kind of hole that we've been digging out of for the last 6 years or so financially. But looking forward, I encourage the vestry to think about accruing money every year for a future sabbatical, for a future priest. That just helps everything. We were blessed this year that a parishioner anonymously gave a few $1,000s to cover the cost of supply clergy during those 3 months. So there will be no financial hit to the congregation for the sabbatical. That is a real blessing and speaks to the generosity of this congregation. But it would be nice, I think, for a future priest to have money not only for the supply for the church, but also to help with some travel expenses for the priest as well. So we've been planning since the middle to end of last year, the vestry and I, putting stuff together. Sharon Sucris has been helpful in brainstorming the different areas that need to be covered. Many plans are in place, many others are in process. I have all the clergy lined up except for one Sunday in October. Still looking for one priest for that. We have a system set up so that Irene will be in touch with those clergy with the door code, and I've written out instructions for what to do on Sundays. And so it should all go well. And the dates are September 1 through the end of November. I'm still on the fence about whether I'll be back that last Sunday in November or not. If I find a priest, and if I can, I might still be away that Sunday. If not, then I'll be back. But basically, all of September, October, November is the plan for the sabbatical. And people have asked, what about Father John? Father John is also going to be on a kind of sabbatical during that time as well. He had already made plans to be away for a lot of the summer and fall. And so we wish him every blessing too on his time away, and look forward to seeing him when he's back as well. So supply priests will cover Sundays. I mentioned the gift to pay for clergy coverage. The supply priests who are coming are a neat group. You're going to get to meet a few of the diocesan staff who are very talented and able. My friends Susie Schaefer and Ellen Ekeveg and Sister Veronica are all priests who work for the bishop at the diocesan office. They'll be covering each one Sunday each. The chaplain from Wayne State University, very engaging guy, a Lutheran pastor, is going to come one Sunday. A retired clergy couple are going to each take a couple of Sundays during that time. So it's going to kind of be fun, I think. I want a good friend of mine who was the dean of the deanery here when it was the Oakland Deanery. Now we're the McGee Deanery, but Stacy Salas will also be covering a few Sundays. So you're going to get some neat, different voices. And that's really a blessing, I think, in a sabbatical time, to meet different clergy, to hear different voices in the pulpit and experience some of the wonderful breadth of the Episcopal Church. The vestry and staff are making sure that all of our regular ministries will continue. We have this new pastoral care committee I mentioned. I am putting together a list of area clergy to cover emergencies and funerals. We have one wedding during the time I'm away. Irene, our secretary's daughter, is getting married, and we have a priest to do that. He's been helping me with the premarital counseling, and so that's in place. And other stuff will come up. So I just encourage people to be flexible, be considerate, be kind, and direct questions either to the appropriate committee chair or ministry, or to Jen Hatchett, who is our senior warden. She'll kind of be where the buck stops during the time I'm away. So anything that's not easily solvable, send it to Jen. She can problem solve and handle, I'm sure, anything that comes up. Not that I expect anything to come up. I think it'll go extremely well. So that's it. As I mentioned, I encourage you to send me your thoughts or questions, or catch me on Sunday and talk about it. I got to say, I'm really looking forward to this time, and I'm really looking forward to some more years, some more good years at St. Philip's. It's such a wonderful church, And we're in such a wonderful moment, I think, in our church. It's just a joy to worship every Sunday and to see the good things that are happening. So blessings to you all, and I look forward to seeing you soon.